Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
It's Friday, September 22nd, 2017. It's that time of the hour for your favorite NFL and college football program. Welcome to week 3 of the Blitz Zone. Hi, everybody. My name's Eric Rosen, and with me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jamie the Sportsman Hickson.
Eric, as always, it's great to work with you, but unfortunately, there are some things going on in the game right now that have me a little perturbed.
And I'm thinking you're referring to the recent discovery by the NFL and several outside organizations that the late Aaron Hernandez, who was convicted, of course, of a homicide of Odin Lloyd, and was had committed suicide in prison during his trial, was discovered to have CTE, which is the cause of a neurological damage of the brain that has caused and led to the deaths of several NFL players, including the late Mike Webster and
Junior Seau, too.
And now it's bringing more of this issue into the limelight even further, and it's making probably parents more nervous about signing their kids up to play football because those kids are the future of the league. But also the NFL is nervous about this too because they already had a $1 billion lawsuit on their hands as it is, and they don't need any more lawsuits coming down the pipeline.
For those who may not be familiar with this condition, CTE stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yep.
CTE occurs thanks to multiple shots to the head. As far as what these parents may be fearing, they have every right to fear for their kids' safety. If they think that their kid might be suffering or might risk a major head injury playing this sport, they are. And if they fear that their kids are going to wind up like a Junior Seau or an Aaron Hernandez, then I would say it's 70 to 80% certain that their kid is going to wind up with an injury like this. If they don't feel that their kids should even waste their time playing football, then their hunch is probably a good one. And seeing what this has done to the sport of football in general, that means enrollment in the Pop Warner games have gone way down, which means you'll probably be seeing less teenagers play the game in high school. And who's to say that you won't be seeing that much money put into the game by every single major university anymore? I remember seeing so many stories in which a lot of major universities were really getting criticized for caring more about the athletic program than about the safety and also the livelihood of their professors or some of the other programs that have been taking place. I'm starting to think that maybe it's about time that they start putting in all of their funding into improving some of the facilities, or
How about this?
raising teachers' salaries, or putting in funding for other programs like drama or other means of entertainment than anything else. Because it's gotten to the point where maybe Troy Aikman's prophecy might run true, that we could be seeing the end of football as we know it in the next 20 or 30 years.
I hope that's not the case because, for me personally, I love the sport of football. It's one of my favorite sports in the world, and it is unfortunate that CTE has happened. And it's not a safe sport. Football is by no definition a safe sport, as you can tell. And in fact, the NFL in the last years has tried to make strides after the years of denying its existence. Now that they really can't because the evidence is out there, they've tried to lessen the amount of hits. They've come up with penalties. They try to take away. They come up with these defenseless receiver penalties to try to curb the amount of major hits or the use of crowning. They got rid of that as well. But now it's leading to more leg injuries, as we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of ACL tears taking place, too. So when you replace one thing, you get another thing that happens. And on top of all that, it's really sad that it's come to this. But if it does end, it would be sad for me. It would be sad for a lot of people because it's not just us. A lot of people. Bars rely on Sunday, especially.
Las Vegas relies on it a hell of a lot.
So right there,
and so do other bookies.
But I'm saying, especially the bars in New York, they rely on Sunday during the NFL season for their livelihood to make up for a lot of the money that they make during the year.
Lost in this whole thing in regards to
is paramount.
Lost in this whole thing with Aaron Hernandez is the fact that another football player wound up suffering from injuries during a game, and he wound up passing away. And this was just last weekend. This was in the Division II circuit. A kid who plays for Midwestern State University in Oklahoma. Robert Grays was the name. He wound up making a tackle in a game against A&M Kingsville this past Saturday, and not even 2 days later, the kid passed away. I mean, it's gotten to the point where even some of the youngest kids in the game are passing away from violent hits on the field. I mean, there was a time when we used to worry about players suffering from heat stroke during summer practices. Now we're worried about players suffering from
traumatic hits.
Traumatic hits. This is not to say that we should end the sport altogether. There is a way to try and save the sport.
Well, how would you propose?
Tackle correctly. Don't lead with your head. It's not that hard. All you got to do is, when you charge after the guy on defense, wrap your arms around him or maybe jump at the guy and try to take him down. You don't need to lead with your head.
That's easy said right now. But
yeah, easier said than done, but this has to be taught in the Pop Warner circuit.
I'm talking, but in game situations, sometimes, people react, do things, then think. They don't think first and then do things, especially on a football field. And sometimes gravity and physics are not your friend, where you can, there are moments where it's almost unavoidable with those those traumatic hits to the head. There are some situations where it can be avoided. Or you watch during punt returns, even though not comparable, but you see people who try to prevent sweeping into the punter's leg and all that. Mm-hmm. There are times where it can be prevented, but there are moments where it's just uncontrollable and you cannot stop it. So it's a double-edged sword. I'm just hoping that with these stories that maybe more funding will be put into CT research, and maybe a fund would be put aside to players who are affected playing during their tenure in the league, so they can be helped with housing, medical bills, and basically other necessities of life. Because the NFL, after all, is a $13 billion a year industry, and these owners, and especially Roger Goodell, who makes $40 million a year, they owe these players from the past and the present and the future to do something for them. But now,
it's a good thing that you mentioned Roger Goodell, because he's up for a contract extension soon, and although the word is that he is about to get himself a new deal, there was some talk about whether it was even going to happen at all, because, well, one guy in particular has not been too fond of the idea of giving the guy an extension, and that's Jerry Jones.
Well, I don't want to get too much into Jerry Jones, what his issues are, but I'll say this. There are people who've been rubbed the wrong way by him. There are people who, in certain circles, like him. But I'll tell you this. When it comes to the CTE situation, I think the NFL, it's in their best interest to put aside a fund towards players who've been affected from this injury.
And this whole CTE thing has fallen under his watch. The number of guys who've passed away from brain injuries, mostly from the past, this has fallen under his watch. The denial at first, this has fallen under his watch. So maybe Jerry Jones does have something to this whole Roger Goodell extension thing.
And the whole thing, Ray Rice in his watch. That's...
Yep, Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, Greg Hardy, and a whole bunch of other guys who've been busted for some kind of ridiculous offense like domestic violence or handgun possession or going so far as to commit murder. Aaron Hernandez, anybody?
Anyway, our prayers and thoughts are with the player from the Division II school. Now, let's take it from the negative side, and not negative, but basically from a sad story and all that hopefully will have some uplifting results with the NFL doing something about CT. And let's go into the very games, themselves, and some news too. Let's start with recapping Week 2 in the NFL, starting with the Minnesota Vikings visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week, of course, Case Keenum was the starter instead of Sam Bradford, because Sam Bradford unfortunately had an injury Week 1, against New Orleans on Monday night. So this time, Case Keenum comes in with a 9-15 record as a starter in his days with both Houston and the St. Louis Rams. Now make it 9-16 because Ben Roethlisberger threw a pair of first-half touchdowns, 297 yards to Martavis Bryant. I'm happy that he's back. And a shovel pass to the rookie Juju Smith-Schuster of USC for a 4-yard score. The Steelers beat the Vikings 26-9.
Well, far be it from me to trash Sam Bradford any more than I already have, because I already made it clear Sam Bradford is not that great. But let's put it this way. He's a hell of a lot better than Case Keenum. And unfortunately, the Vikings are going to have to keep starting Case Keenum because Sam Bradford is not playing this weekend.
The only good pass that Case Keenum had was on a side pass to Stephon Diggs. Other than that, it was really just a god-awful performance. Now, the Cowboys visit the Broncos. Talk about god-awful right here. Ezekiel Elliott, 9 carries, 8 yards. That's less than a yard a carry right there. And Trevor Siemian, 4 touchdowns, 2 of them to Emmanuel Sanders, 3 total scores from C.J. Anderson of 107 yards. And the Broncos beat the Cowboys 42-17. And the worst part, the 103-yard pick six by Aqib Talib.
Again, will the real Trevor Siemian please stand up? Because this guy has just he's done everything from force the fans to pull their hair out to serenade the guy with praise. That's why I say, which Trevor Siemian is going to show up to play in a particular week? The one who has the potential to throw 4 touchdowns, or the one who has the potential to commit 4 turnovers?
And what about the lack of effort from Ezekiel Elliott this week? This was one of his worst performances of his entire career, bar none. And I'm thinking the situation with his suspension, being upheld right now, that I think is somewhat getting to him on top of, playing the game as well and just getting his head focused. And the lack of effort that was shown in the game, especially after the interception, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you were to ask a certain Hall of Famer what he thought of Ezekiel Elliott's performance, he's not going to make excuses. He's thinking that Ezekiel Elliott all and out quit during this game on his teammates, then blame it on a distraction from a possible 4-game suspension.
Now let's go to the Superdome, where the Saints were hosting the New England Patriots, both teams coming in at 0-1, needing a victory in the worst way. And the Patriots, from that debacle opening Thursday night game against the Chiefs, they come back with a vengeance, and they win 36-20. Rob Gronkowski had a 53-yard catch and run. Unfortunately, he did leave with a groin injury, but I think he still will be able to play this coming week. And Tom Brady and Drew Brees was 27-45, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns, but they failed to go for a to convert a 4th down. Why go for a 4th down when you're within field goal range? You're only down by 13 points towards the end of the first half. You could have made it a 10-point game for the Saints. Instead, they blow their opportunity on that pitiful fourth down opportunity. Brady gets a big touchdown play. Gets New England to the New Orleans 10-yard line. Gostkowski gets a field goal. It's 30-13 at the half. That was just a bad decision on Sean Payton's part right there, but also for New England to take advantage of that. And the first 3 drives that New England had ended with a 19-yard touchdown to Rex Burkhead, Gronkowski's long touchdown, and the 13-yard pass to Chris Hogan. So, yeah, ultimately they won 36-20. And by the way, how does a defense like New Orleans get 2 interceptions and yet none of them count because they get penalties? That baffles my mind.
It's just lousy execution and also lousy technique of coverage as well. This is what separates teams like the Patriots, who've won 5 Super Bowls, from teams like the Saints, or in this case, the Aints,
who now for the 4th straight year are at 0-2 and could be in a very bad predicament. It's good offense for the most part. For some parts, I think it's also the fact that they're missing Willie Snead, who still is on that 3-game suspension for the DUI. Mm-hmm. Talk about quitting on your team right there. That's what Willie did to his team by committing that DUI.
And there's also the matter of Drew Brees. There's already rumors of what's going to be in Drew Brees' future. Everybody wants to sound the alarm all of a sudden and ask whether Drew Brees is going to come back to the Saints next season. I think they should worry first about week 3 of the season more than Drew Brees' future. Besides,
worry about your defense more than anything. I think the offense will be fine. They just need to get more of Adrian Pierce involved in the offense, honestly, because you're giving more touches to Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, which I understood with Alvin because he's the young rookie coming in. But Adrian, you signed him for a reason. Get him the ball more. This is what he's there for, to really get you over the edge. And unfortunately, that's not happening with him. Now, let's go into the Sunday night game. The Falcons open up in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the new $1.5 billion arena, against the Green Bay Packers. And what happens? Matt Ryan throws 250 yards, a touchdown. Devonta Freeman has a couple of scoring runs. Desmond Trufant gets an interception gets a fumble recovery off a bad pass by Aaron Rodgers for a touchdown, and the Falcons win 34-23. So this was an indictment on the defense for the Packers. Also, the injuries that took place, when you look at it, especially Jordy Nelson being hurt.
Yeah.
Randall Cobb was injured. Mm-hmm. David Bakhtiari on their off. They lost a lot of, I think a total of 6 players in that one game.
This isn't boding too well for the Packers for at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks, because they're going to be needing these guys down the stretch. As for the Falcons, so much for them suffering from that hangover after blowing that lead in the Super Bowl. I think they've done pretty well for themselves the first couple of weeks of the season. They got that big test out of the way. Now let's see what they do with another big test in Detroit this weekend.
And you got to like Julio Jones. And Desmond Trufant, if he can stay healthy this year and you have some really good pieces on defense. The unfortunate thing is Vic Beasley got hurt in this game, and he was their sack master. So going into the game in Detroit, that could really hurt. But we'll get into that in a bit. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia, Kansas City play each other. This is basically the teacher versus the student. I'm talking about Doug Peterson versus old mentor Andy Reid. It's amazing. They were together as player and coach in Philadelphia, as assistant and coach in Philadelphia and Kansas City. Now Doug Peterson is basically doing the same type of offense. The problem with Philadelphia and Kansas City, same problem. Mm-hmm. Lack of balance between the run and the pass.
Yeah.
Really, that's always been an issue with Andy Reid teams. Is there's no balance between that, and they always have the 30s style defense. But anyway, Kareem Hunt gets in the end zone twice. Travis Kelce gets the go-ahead 15-yard shovel pass, leaping touchdown, and the Chiefs beat the Eagles 27-20. The best part was at the end of the game when the Eagles were down by just a touchdown, they go for the onside kick with 5 seconds. They recover it. And unfortunately, Carson Wentz goes for the pass in the end zone, and it gets batted down by the KC defense. Yeah, Chiefs win 27-20.
Just an outstanding performance by the Chiefs all around. Let's see what they could do when the real meaty part of the schedule begins. As for the Eagles, I wouldn't fret too much about this because when you think about it,
The effort was there.
yeah, the effort was there, but the execution was just not.
And the lack of running, they only ran the ball 13 times in this game.
You can't do that, especially with a second-year quarterback taking the snaps from center. You got to compliment him with a really good running game, and I just don't see the guys in the backfield that can help Wentz out. I mean,
Garrett Blount, who they signed in the offseason, and yet he didn't get a single touch.
I don't know if that's a design of play calling or if that's a design of not having any confidence in the guy. LeGarrette Blount has been a very well-established player in this game. You've got to feed him the ball a little bit more. I mean, not to take anything away from Carson Wentz because he's already shown that he can play in this league, but just try to run the ball a little bit more.
Now, let's go to the Browns-Ravens. Basically, Deshaun Kaiser gets his second straight start. In the first 4 drives of the game, he gets a 3-and-out, a fumble, lost fumble, an interception, and a punt recovery. Then he gets a migraine. Then Kevin Hogan, the second-year quarterback out of Stanford, comes in. He does get a touchdown. Then after a while, Kaiser finally comes back in the second half. They still ended up losing 24-10, and this was basically the defense. This was a total defensive great game for the Baltimore Ravens. In the first 2 games, 10 takeaways. Mm-hmm. And Brandon Carr, who they signed in the offseason, has had an interception in each of the first 2 games.
Yeah.
That's really great right there. For this secondary has improved. This defense with Terrell Suggs is just outstanding. And
let's see if they can keep their health going, because if we've learned one thing about the Ravens is that if they don't have their best players, they're not winning.
And
regardless of who the opponent is.
And Jeremy Maclin, second straight week, gets a touchdown for the Ravens too. That's another brilliant signing right there on the GM's part. And now the Bills and the Panthers. This game came down to the last play of the game. Tyrod Taylor gets the ball. Zay Jones is able to get away from the defensive back. He's clearly open, and he could get the winning touchdown. Tyrod Taylor, unfortunately, throws a terrible throw way off from Zay Jones, the rookie out of East Carolina. He has to try to make some crazy move to make up for the terrible pass from Tyrod Taylor, is not able to make the catch, and therefore the Bills lost 9-3. It was all field goals all day, and the unfortunate part of this game for the Panthers, they might have lost Greg Olsen for a while. He just
broke his foot.
Right foot. He had surgery. He's out. He's going to be out a couple of months.
That's going to be a really bad manpower loss for the Panthers. Another guy who can not only stretch the field, but can also hold his own, more than hold his own on that line. Who's going to be the guy to back him up down the road?
Well, you got Kelvin Benjamin. You still got Ed Dixon right now. He's going to be the primary ball carrier, primary tight end right now, who's been a reliable tight end in situations when you need him. So they do have some players, but they got to feed Christian McCaffrey. 2 yards per carry averaged in this game. That is not why you signed a guy who had, in 1 year, he had 3,000 all-purpose yards. The year that Derrick Henry won the Heisman when he shouldn't have, and it should have went to McCaffrey.
What would you say to the idea of maybe Christian McCaffrey being a third-string tight end for the Panthers? Because he was Mr. Everything at Stanford. Who's to say that he shouldn't be able to add another assignment to his repertoire this time?
You could probably line him up as a slot receiver even if you need to in trick situations. He's sort of their Tavon Austin, if you will. But they did win the Panthers. They're 2-0, so it's good. And they've only given up a combined 6 points in 2 games. They have not given up a touchdown. So that's really great for this Panthers defense. Mm-hmm. Now, the Titans-Jaguars. Jaguars are coming off a huge win, but let's keep in mind, they were playing Houston with Tom Savage starting, not Deshaun Watson at the time.
This time, the Jaguars were playing against a Tennessee team that had Marcus Mariota, a guy with great potential as a quarterback.
And Derrick Henry, the emergence, 92 yards, a career high for him. It also showed DeMarco Murray was hurting, actually, in that game, and he had to sit out for most of the second half. I'm hoping that it's only maybe a week or two that he's not out for some time, because who knows if he'll be able to play this week. But Derrick Henry is still a reliable primary ball carrier for sure. Mm-hmm. And Delaney Walker, the tight end, got a touchdown on the ground. Jenny Fowler, they won 37-16 over the Jags. And
easy pickings there.
3 turnovers by Blake Bortles. Ineptitude. Bears, Buccaneers. Buccaneers' first game due to Hurricane Irma ending any chance of Week 1 being played out in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
They come out at home against an old friend, Mike Glennon, who's been there for 3 years and very few starts, if you will. And it showed in this game why the Buccaneers started Jameis Winston over Mike Glennon.
Mm-hmm.
4 turnovers by Mike Glennon, and they ended up losing 29-7.
There's nothing really to take away from this game except the fact that the Bears need to start Mitchell Trubisky now. Nothing against Mike Glennon, but quite frankly, it was a really overzealous move that the Bears made, giving a guy such a lofty contract, especially when he had very, very little to prove. Not that Trubisky's going to be any better, but if they're going to try and see what they have with this kid in the future, it's best to start him now. Not only that, but it's comparing apples and oranges here. I mean, who would you much rather have to be in a game? Mike Glennon or Jameis Winston, a guy who is only grown as a player more and more with each week.
And you look at the players he has around him. This year, they signed Deshaun Jackson, to be another complimentary. But him and Mike Evans in the last few years, they've really complemented each other. They're a really great tandem at wide receiver and quarterback. So this is this could be the next big thing. I'm thinking like Jerry Rice, possibly Joe Montana type of stuff. They keep going down that route. Now, the Cardinals-Colts, both teams coming off horrible Week 1 losses, needing a victory in the worst way. And the Colts saw the ineptitude of Scott Tolzien Week 1 when they got drubbed by the LA Rams 46-9. This time they put in Jacoby Brissett, who they just acquired a few weeks ago from the New England Patriots, and they gave up Philip Dorsett in that trade. And this is why, since Andrew Luck is still recovering from offseason shoulder surgery, they need somebody to at least try to be the stalwart or the caretaker of the team and get them into some level of respectability. Well, Jacoby Brissett gets him on 2 scores in the first 2 drives, a field goal by Adam Vinatieri, the legend, who will be a Hall of Famer at some point, and, of course, a touchdown play. Then, unfortunately, things got it was 13-3 at one point, and here is the game-tying touchdown. J.J. Nelson, the wide receiver for the Cardinals, splits between two defenders, gets a 45-yard pass down the right side from Carson Palmer, making it 13-10. Then Phil Dawson, who's been in the league for so many teams, especially with the 49ers, now with the Cardinals, gets the game-tying field goal, making it 13-all. He has a chance to get the game winner at the end of the game. 42-yard, misses it wide left. It goes to overtime. Brissett has the ball for the Colts. Throws an unfortunate pick to the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu, setting up the game-winning 30-yard field goal by Phil Dawson. The Cardinals win 16-13, and this is the Cardinals team that doesn't have David Johnson till basically the end of the year, and they got a victory in the worst way. And Bruce Arians going up against a team that he helped lead as the interim back in 2012 goes back there to basically get the victory.
Just an outstanding defensive performance by both teams, which is saying a lot considering it's the Colts, who've had major problems defensively in the last few years. But Arizona was just better. And Tyrann Mathieu basically showed his football knowledge when he took advantage of a rather inexperienced Jacoby Brissett in this game, and it wound up setting up the game winner.
Let's not forget, he's only been on the team maybe a few weeks at best. He's still getting to learn the playbook and the players. And the fact that he came out and still was able
This is also his second NFL season.
I know, and he was still had a lead at one point. But unfortunately, they couldn't get anything going after those first 2 drives. And even with that 13-3 lead they had, it still was not enough. And at the end of the day, Arizona was able to climb back in. Now, the Seahawks, this year, how many touchdowns have they scored altogether? 1. First one came in this game. It was the front corner of the end zone play for 9 yards from Russell Wilson to Paul Richardson. They beat the 49ers 12-9. It was a pitiful game on both teams. One of the sloppiest games I've ever had to witness. But at the end, the Seahawks got their victory. Now they got a very tough road game coming up. Now the Redskins-Rams. The Redskins coming off a bad Week 1 loss against the Eagles at home. They go to L.A., 2 teams familiar with each other. Why? Sean McVay, the head coach of the Rams, was the offensive coordinator last